My mother took her last breath in my arms, in the room I built for her, in the house I gave 11 years of my life to. The roses outside her window were still blooming when my sister texted, "So what are we doing with that room?" And I realized grief doesn't pause for anyone's convenience. Not even family. Thank you for sticking around with me, my wonderful story family. If you're already hooked in for today's story and ready to enjoy it, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. I need you to understand something before I tell you this story. I am not a saint. I have never pretended to be. I am a 39-year-old man from Dayton, Ohio, who drives a slightly dented Ford F-150, burns scrambled eggs about half the time, and cried exactly twice in his adult life. Once when the Browns lost in overtime in 2002, and once when my mother hummed her last hymn and went quiet. I'm telling you that so you understand. This is not the story of a perfect son. This is the story of a son who made one right choice, maybe the only unambiguously right choice of his entire life, and has been living with the consequences of that choice ever since. The beautiful consequences and the ugly ones. The choice was simple. When everyone else looked away, I looked at my mother. And I didn't stop looking until she was gone. Her name was Patricia and Calloway. Everyone called her Pat. She was 5'4", stubborn as winter, and made the best pot roast in the state of Ohio. She raised 3 kids mostly on her own after my dad's heart gave out in 1999. She worked 22 years as a school librarian, never complained once about the salary, and spent her weekends tending the most aggressively beautiful rose garden in Dayton's zip code. She was my mother. And for 11 years, she was my roommate, my Sunday morning coffee companion, my reason for buying a house with a downstairs bedroom and a south-facing window. And when she left something behind that my sisters now want to take. I was 30 when I made the decision. It was a Thursday. I had driven down to Dayton from Columbus without calling ahead because something had been pulling at me for weeks. A low, steady anxiety I couldn't name. Mom had been alone in the family house for 6 years since Dad died. She was fine, she kept saying. She was always fine. I found her on the kitchen floor. She hadn't fallen. She'd been trying to pick up a can of soup that had rolled under the counter and she'd sat down because her balance was off and then she couldn't get back up. She had been there for about 40 minutes. She told me this with the particular embarrassed precision of a woman who is used to being the competent one in every room. The one who holds things together, the one who never needs rescuing. Her eyes weren't scared. They were ashamed. That look, I have thought about it almost every day since. That look is what made me drive back to Columbus and spend 3 weeks researching 4-bedroom houses with good natural light and wide door frames. Because I'd done some reading by then and I knew what was coming. The diagnosis, early-stage Parkinson's, had a trajectory. And my mother was going to walk that trajectory, and I was going to be standing next to her the whole time. My sisters didn't see it that way. Renee, the oldest, lived in Atlanta with her husband and 3 kids. She was practical and loud and loved Mom fiercely in that way where the love is real but the logistics are always complicated. She sent brochures. Actual printed brochures about assisted living communities with names like Sunrise Gardens and Willow Creek. She made calls. She talked to doctors on Mom's behalf and reported back with careful, organized summaries. She just didn't offer her house. My other sister, Claudette, lived in Phoenix. She was the free spirit of the 3 of us. 3 jobs in 5 years, 2 apartments in 1 year, always in the middle of some personal evolution. She called Mom every Sunday without fail. She sent gifts, scarves, audiobooks, once a weighted blanket that Mom adored. She flew home for Christmas and always stayed 4 extra days because she genuinely, truly enjoyed Mom's company. She just didn't offer her house either. So I offered mine. I bought a 4-bedroom colonial in Columbus with a downstairs master bedroom that got the morning sun. I widened the door frame, put in a walk-in shower with a bench and good handrails, built the kind of closet Mom had always wanted but never had. And outside her window, in the narrow rectangle of yard that faced south, I planted 16 rose bushes. Same variety she'd had in Dayton. Pink and cream, old-fashioned, the kind that bloom dense and heavy and smell like something your grandmother kept in a drawer. Mom said no 4 times before she said yes. She moved in on a Tuesday in October 11 years ago. 2 suitcases. Her Bible. A framed photo of Dad on their wedding day that lived on her nightstand for the entire 11 years, not once moving from its spot. She walked into her room, saw the roses through the window, and cried. The deep kind. The kind that costs you something. I looked away to give her privacy. When I looked back, she was standing with one hand pressed flat against the glass like she was touching them. Ryan, she said, that's my name, Ryan. You didn't have to do this. Yes, I did, Mom, I said. Yes, I did. I need to be honest about what the next 11 years look like because people will sometimes ask and I can tell they expect me to say it was hard but worth it and leave it at that. And it absolutely was. But the full answer is longer. It was 3 a.m. alarms and medication spreadsheets and learning to braid my mother's hair from a YouTube tutorial because her hands couldn't manage it anymore and she was particular. God, she was particular about her hair. It was rescheduling work calls and missing weekends and explaining to people at the office why I couldn't travel for the Thursday meeting. It was Denise, our home nurse, and Denise's replacement after Denise moved away, and the new nurse who Mom didn't like for 3 months before she came around. It was also Sunday mornings. Every Sunday we drank coffee together in her room, the roses bright or bare outside depending on the season, and she told me things about my father I'd never known. She told me he used to leave notes in her coat pockets. 1 sentence every single day for 22 years. You look beautiful today. Different words, same meaning, never missed a day. She told me he cried at their wedding and blamed his contacts. She told me about a fight they'd had in 1987 that lasted 3 weeks and how they'd repaired it and what she'd learned and how she'd wished she'd learned it earlier. Those Sunday mornings are the most valuable thing I have ever owned. And then, in year 5, something unexpected happened. Her name was Joanna. She was the occupational therapist the hospital assigned to Mom after a fall in the kitchen. She came on Monday mornings, cheerful and precise, with a bag full of adaptive tools and the kind of calm competence that didn't announce itself. Mid-30s. Dark brown hair she kept in a ponytail. Laugh lines that showed up before the laugh was fully finished. I did not expect to fall in love with my mother's occupational therapist. I genuinely did not expect that. But here's what happened. One Monday morning I was in the kitchen making coffee while Joanna worked with Mom in the next room, and I heard Mom say something and then Joanna laugh, and it was the most uncomplicated sound I had heard in a long time. And I stood in my kitchen with the coffee pot in my hand and felt something shift in my chest like furniture moving in an empty house. I went in to offer coffee. Joanna looked up, said yes with the ease of someone who had already decided to trust the room, and Mom looked between us with an expression she never fully managed to suppress, the particular look of a mother who has already decided something. Joanna, Mom said, completely unprompted. Ryan makes very good coffee. He's also single. Just in case that's useful information. I almost dropped the coffee pot. Joanna laughed. I turned red. Mom looked deeply satisfied. We talked for an hour after the session. She came back Monday. And Monday after that. Eventually, it was not entirely about the therapy. I took her to dinner in March. She told me on the second date that she had been warned by a friend about getting involved with someone who was a full-time caregiver, that it could be emotionally complicated. I told her that everything about my life was emotionally complicated and she was welcome to stay or go and I would understand either way. She stayed. 3 months in, she met Mom for the first time not as a therapist but as a girlfriend. Mom had known this was coming and had apparently selected her outfit 2 days in advance. She was wearing the green dress, the one she was saving for something special. She sat up straight in her chair and extended her hand with the dignity of a woman receiving an ambassador. Joanna took her hand and said, "Mrs. Calloway, you have the most beautiful rose garden I've ever seen." Mom said, "I know. Ryan planted them for me. He's a keeper." I left the room before either of them could see my face. Parkinson's is a slow thief. It does not arrive all at once. It takes things in pieces, quietly, and by the time you notice one piece is gone it is already working on the next. By year 9, Mom had lost most of her fine motor control. By year 10, Her balance required a walker and then a wheelchair. By year 11, her speech had softened to something barely above a whisper, not because she had nothing to say, but because the mechanism for saying it was failing her. Her mind stayed sharp until very nearly the end. That was both the blessing and the difficulty of it. She knew exactly what was happening. She was present for every piece of it. And so was I. Joanna and I had moved in together by year 8. We got engaged quietly, without a big production, on a Sunday morning in Mom's room. I had planned something more elaborate, but Mom fell asleep in her chair mid-coffee, and the moment was so gentle and still that I just took the ring out of my pocket and Joanna said yes before I'd finished the sentence. We married in the backyard. Mom sat front row in her wheelchair, in the green dress, and cried through the entire ceremony. At the reception, when I knelt beside her chair to check on her, she pressed her palm to my cheek and said, barely audible, precise, "She loves you, right?" I knew what she meant. She meant Joanna had taken the whole picture of my life and not asked me to crop anything out. She meant the Monday mornings and the medication spreadsheets and the Sunday coffees were not inconveniences Joanna tolerated. They were part of the man she chose. She loves you, right? I have thought about those 3 words more than almost anything else. Renee and Claudette came to the wedding. Stayed 4 days. Took Mom out to lunch on the second day and sent me photos, which I appreciated. Then flew back to their lives. They visited maybe once a year. Sometimes less. They called consistently. That part I'll give them. But there is a distinction between loving someone and loving someone enough to rearrange the entire architecture of your life around them. Mom knew the difference. She never said it to them. But late at night in the last year, when it was just the 2 of us and she could barely manage words, she would find my hand in the dark and hold it. And that was the whole sentence. She passed on a Wednesday in March, just before sunrise. She had been unresponsive for 2 days. I was beside her bed. Joanna was in the chair by the window. The room was very quiet. She stopped. The way a song stops. Not violently. Just the last note and then silence. Joanna held me together. I called Renee. Then Claudette. They grieved. Genuinely, truly. Whatever their choices had been, they loved our mother, and I will never take that from them. The funeral was Saturday. Mom had pre-planned everything because she was practical even about her own dying. She had written letters to each of us. Mine said, "You gave me a garden to rest in and roses to wake up to every morning of my last good years. I will be tending roses on the other side. Save me a Sunday morning, baby." I folded that letter and put it in my wallet. It is still there. 41 hours after we buried my mother, my phone buzzed. Renee. Hey. I know this is soon and I'm sorry to bring it up, but we've been cramped here for a while and Mom's room is just sitting there now. Thought we could talk about options. I read it 3 times. Then I put the phone face down and sat in the kitchen for 2 hours without moving. Joanna was upstairs. The house was very quiet. Outside the kitchen window I could see the edge of the rose garden, still winter bare, and the window of Mom's room, and the curtain she'd chosen herself hanging still in the gray March light. Joanna came downstairs eventually. Looked at my face. Sat across from me. "Talk to me," she said. I handed her my phone. She read it. Her expression didn't change. Joanna is very controlled when she needs to be. She set the phone down. "How do you want to handle it?" That question. That particular, careful, perfect question. She didn't tell me what to feel or what to do. She handed the wheel back to me. I called Renee. She answered immediately. "Danny, before you say anything." "It's Ryan," I said. Nobody calls me Danny except her, and in that moment I needed her to hear my actual name. "And Mom has been in the ground since Saturday, Renee." "I know. I know that. And I'm sorry for the timing. But we're genuinely struggling with space and I thought." She lived in that room for 11 years. I heard my voice go flat and even the way it goes when I am working very hard not to raise it. Her clothes are in the closet. Her Bible is on the nightstand. The roses she looked at every single morning are 12 feet from her window. And you want to talk about options. I didn't mean it like that. Tell me how you meant it. She got defensive. Said I was being dramatic. Said grief was distorting my perspective. And then she said the word that ended the call. She said I had hoarded Mom for 11 years and was now trying to hoard her memory too. That the room wasn't just mine to decide about. That she deserved something. I hung up. Claudette called that evening. I was in Mom's room, sitting in her chair by the window, the lights off. I heard you talk to Renee. Yeah. She gave me her version. I'd rather hear yours. I paused. That was not what I expected. I told her. All of it, the text, the call, the word hoarded. I kept my voice level. I was too tired to be anything else. When I finished, the line was quiet for a long time. Then Claudette said something I had not remotely prepared myself for. She's wrong. And I've been thinking since the funeral about something I haven't been honest with myself about. Which is that we left you alone with something that should have been shared. And I am sorry for that, Ryan. Genuinely. I sent money and told myself that counted and it didn't. Not the way it should have. I sat up straighter in the dark. Claudette. I'm not fishing for forgiveness right now. I just need to say it. You were there. Every single day for 11 years you were there. And Renee and I made choices that meant you were doing it alone. And I called that okay because you never complained. But you not complaining doesn't make it okay. My throat tightened. What are you saying about the room? I asked. I'm saying it's your house. It was her room. What you do with it is entirely your decision and no one can tell you otherwise. Renee has no claim on that space and neither do I. She's going to push. Let her. I won't be pushing with her. We talked for another hour. We talked about Mom, really talked, the way I don't think we ever had, because there had always been the buffer of physical distance and polite phone calls. Claudette asked me what Mom had been like in the last years. I told her about the Sunday mornings. The stories about Dad. The hair braiding. The way she pressed her hand to the window glass every morning in spring when the roses were blooming. Claudette cried quietly and I let her. She sounds like herself, Claudette said finally. Even at the end. She sounds like herself. She was, I said. She really was. That night, Joanna and I sat together in Mom's room. Not to do anything, just to sit. The reading lamp was on low. Mom's slippers were still by the bed. Her glasses were folded on the nightstand the way she always left them. Joanna picked up the glasses and held them without saying anything. What do you want to do with this room? She asked eventually. I don't know yet, I said. I don't want to rush it. Then don't. It was so simple when she said it. The whole argument with Renee, the phone call with Claudette, the buzzing weight of everyone else's opinion. All of it simplified down to, then don't. She told me something once, I said, looking out at the garden. About how she knew she'd raised me right. She said it was because I never once made her feel like a burden. She said that was the thing she was most afraid of. Being a burden to her children. And I told her she couldn't be a burden because a burden is something you put down when you get tired and I was never going to put her down. Joanna was quiet. She held that, I said. She held that for years. She told me about it again in the last month when she could barely speak. She brought it up specifically to tell me she'd held it. That's not small, Joanna said. No, I agreed. It isn't. What do you want the room to be? I looked around. The curtains. The nightstand. The framed photo of Dad that had sat in the same spot for 11 years. The Bible. The slippers. I want it to stay hers for a while, I said. I want to sit in it on Sunday mornings and drink coffee. I want the roses to bloom this spring and I want to see them through her window. And then, maybe, I want it to become something that would make her happy. I just don't know what that is yet. Joanna nodded slowly. Then that's what it is. She took my hand. Outside the window the garden was dark and bare, but in 2 months the roses would come back. They always came back. 3 weeks later, Renee came. No phone call. She knocked on my door on a Saturday afternoon, and when I opened it, she was standing on my porch with her husband Greg behind her, and she had a measuring tape, a physical measuring tape, in her right hand. I looked at the measuring tape. I looked at her. "I want to talk in person," she said. "Can I come in?" I stepped back and let her in. I still don't entirely know why. Maybe I needed it to be finished. We sat in the living room. Joanna stayed in the kitchen. Present, close, not intervening. I could hear her moving around in there, slow and quiet. Renee opened with an apology. It was brief and a little mechanical, but I don't think it was insincere. Then she made her case. The room was sitting empty. It was part of Mom's life, and she felt cut off from that. She had never really gotten to be part of Mom's final years. Geography and circumstances hadn't allowed it, and she was grieving that along with grieving Mom herself. If she came to visit more, if she felt connected to something physical and real, it would help her process the loss. I listened to all of it without interrupting. When she finished, I said, "Renee, what was Mom's favorite hymn?" She blinked. What? Her favorite hymn? What was it? Something I don't know. Something she liked. Something gospel. "His eye is on the sparrow." She hummed it every single morning. When she was in pain, she hummed it. When she was scared, she hummed it. The last night she was conscious, she hummed it so quietly I had to lean in to hear it. I heard it. I was that close. Asterisk. Renee looked at the carpet. What did she smell like? I asked. Ryan. Rosewood hand lotion. The kind in the yellow bottle. She'd been using it since 1994. I ordered it online when the drugstore stopped carrying it. She went through one bottle every 6 weeks, and I kept 12 in the cabinet at all times. The room was very still. "I am not telling you this to hurt you," I said. "I am telling you this because you said I hoarded her. And I want you to understand that knowing someone, really knowing them, the hymns and the hand lotion and the way they press their palm to the glass when the roses bloom, that is not hoarding. That is showing up. Every day, for 11 years, that is what showing up looks like. And you can have this room, Renee. I cannot stop you from asking for it. But you need to understand what you're asking for. You're asking me to turn the room where our mother lived and was known and was fully loved into a guest room. And the answer is no. Not because I'm punishing you. Because she deserves better than that." Renee started crying. Not polite crying. The deep, ugly, unplanned kind. I got her a glass of water. I sat with her. I did not give her the room. 2 months passed. Renee and I were careful with each other. Not cold, careful. Claudette and I talked every Sunday, real conversations, and it was like finding a sibling I hadn't fully known was there. Joanna started showing in month 2. We had found out 3 weeks after Mom passed. She had been waiting for the right moment, and the right moment had kept not arriving, and then Mom was gone, and she didn't want to overwhelm me. She told me on a quiet Tuesday evening, sitting on the kitchen counter, watching my face like she was reading a map. I stood in the kitchen for a long moment, processing. All of it. The loss and the arrival happening in the same season, the same house. Then I crossed the kitchen and held her for a long time without saying anything. "Is this okay?" She asked into my shoulder. "This is everything," I said. We found out it was a girl in the 2nd trimester. We sat with names for weeks. We didn't discuss it formally. It just settled, slowly, the way some decisions do, until one morning over coffee Joanna said, "Patricia," and I put down my cup and didn't say anything for a moment. "Yeah," I finally said. "Yeah, that's her name." I wrote the letter the week after that. Not to hurt anyone. Not to win anything. I wrote it because I needed my sisters to know who our mother had been in those 11 years. Not the illness, not the decline, but the fullness of her. The Sunday mornings. The stories about Dad and the notes in the coat pockets. The green dress. The hair braiding. The humming. The roses. I wrote it all down, and at the end I wrote, "I am not writing this to make you carry guilt. I am writing this so she exists somewhere in words. Completely, joyfully, known. She was not a room to be allocated. She was a whole life. I was lucky enough to be inside it for 11 years. I want you to know what that looked like. I think she would have wanted you to know. I sent it to both of them. Claudette called within the hour, crying too hard to finish most of her sentences. She said she was booking a flight. She said she wanted to sit in Mom's room and drink coffee and she hoped that was okay. I'll have it ready, I said. Renee took 4 days. Then she called on a Sunday evening, and her voice was different. Quieter, the defensiveness gone out of it like air from a tire. I don't have the words for what I owe you, she said. You don't owe me anything. I owe you the truth at least. I asked for that room because I was ashamed and I didn't know how to be ashamed correctly, so I turned it into a logistical problem. But it was never about the room. I know, I said. I know that. She loved you, Ryan. I mean, she loved all of us. But what she had with you was something I'll spend the rest of my life wishing I'd been brave enough to build. I looked out the window. The roses were coming in, just the first early blooms, pink and cream, the exact variety I'd planted 11 years ago for a woman who pressed her palm to the glass to touch them. Build it with your own kids, I said. It's not too late to build it with someone. That's what she'd tell you. A long silence. Yeah, Renee said. Yeah, you're right. I renovated the room in June. Not gutted. Renovated carefully, the way you handle something that matters. I kept the window. Non-negotiable. I kept the south-facing view of the roses, which by June were in full bloom. Dense, heavy, cream pink, the old-fashioned variety that blooms like it means it. I kept her curtains. Joanna found matching fabric and extended them for the new layout. I kept her chair in the corner by the window, and her Bible on the shelf above it, and the framed photo of her in the green dress at our wedding, laughing at something Joanna had just said, head thrown back completely unguarded. And her letter to me, framed and mounted on the wall. The rest of the room I built for Patricia. White walls. Soft light. A crib position so that when she's old enough to stand, the first thing she'll see every morning is the rose garden through the window. The same window her grandmother looked through every morning for 11 years. The same roses. Joanna cried when she saw it finished. Good crying, the grateful kind. Claudette flew in August and spent a long Sunday afternoon in the reading corner with Mom's Bible in her lap. I left her alone in there. When she came out, her eyes were red, but her posture was different. Lighter somehow, like she'd set something down that had been getting heavier for years. She's in there, Claudette said. I know, I said. Renee came for Thanksgiving. She and Joanna cooked together in the kitchen and I heard them laughing and the sound of it moved through the house in a way that felt like something healing. She held Patricia for a long time after dinner, standing by the living room window, swaying, and I watched from the hallway and didn't say anything. On Sunday morning before she left, I made 3 cups of coffee and we all sat, Renee, Claudette, and me, in Mom's room. In the early light. The roses were long past blooming by November, but the garden was still there, tidy and waiting, and Mom's chair was in the corner and her Bible was on the shelf and her face was on the wall, laughing in the green dress. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. At some point the curtains moved. Just slightly, the way curtains move when a window is barely cracked somewhere else in the house. All 3 of us noticed it. None of us said anything. I picked up my coffee cup. Good morning, Mom, I said. And the room did what rooms do when they have held love long enough. It held it still, quietly, without needing to explain itself. The light came through the south-facing window the way it always had. The photo caught it the way it always caught it. Her Bible sat where it always sat. Patricia would sleep in this room. She would grow up looking at roses. She would grow up knowing, not from a lesson, but from the room itself, from the air of it, from the light, that she came from people who showed up for each other. Who stayed. Joanna appeared in the doorway with her coffee, saw the 3 of us and came to sit beside me without a word. She fit into the room the way she had always fit into the full picture of my life. Completely, without asking anything to be cropped out. My mother had seen that. Had known it before I did, probably. She loves you, right? I set my cup down and looked at the window and the garden beyond it and the sky going pink and gold over Columbus, Ohio on a Sunday morning in November, and I thought, this is what I have. This room. This light. This woman beside me. This name on the wall. This child asleep down the hall who will wake up soon and need feeding and will spend her whole life knowing, in her bones, what it means to be held by people who chose to stay. I thought, Mom, I think I turned out all right. And somewhere in the curtains, in the light, in the particular smell of rosewood and old pages and Sunday morning coffee, I think she agreed. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.